when it comes to discipline, okay? And then when we talk about, what was the second part you hit on?
Informing your people.
Yeah, okay, so informing your people. Informing your people are going to know when you're skating around things, and they're your people. I mean, they work for you. So you want to be honest with them, you want to be truthful. There's very few times that I've run into where there are instances where you can't tell them why, because that's your job. Like, you have to be able to answer why, and if you can't, you need to find out what the answer is and then get back to them. Tactical level, you know, sometimes it is that everyone's heard the term "shut up and color." That happens, but you know, that is a finite time. You know, get the task done quickly, and then we can review why we did that or what the purpose was.
Great stuff.
So, touching on that communication issue, going to reiterate the importance of communicating to your people what's going on. I completely agree with that. On a ship, and just as officers, you are more in touch with what's going on in your commander's head, what's going on with your schedule, all of the things that are coming up, and being able to communicate the why helps people deal with whatever how is going on. So whatever's happening in your ship schedule, any of that. The one thing though, so the senior enlisted, I haven't always had great senior enlisted. And so while you do want to try, my first chief was pretty freaking awesome, but then my second chief, it's one of those things where you need to trust your gut. My ship, it was actually my second deployment. I was the damage control assistant, and we're floating off the Horn of Africa. We're stuck in this like 5 by 5 mile box for 4 months. We would get a replenishment maybe once every 15, 20 days. And when you start running out of fresh food and there's nothing to do, like, we didn't understand what the mission was. It was super secret, so people get bored and they start doing stupid things. Well, my chief, he kind of had an old school mentality. When people screw up, we're going to close the doors of the shop, and we're going to take care of it ourselves. And I knew, but I pretended I didn't know that this was going on as the DCA. And they would close the doors, and, ma'am, you don't want to go in there right now. And I'd be like, all right, chief, like, whatever it is. Well, it escalated. It got worse. I knew in my gut I should have told him to cut it out. Should have maybe brought it to the attention of my department head. This was kind of in the beginning days of YouTube. And they decided to start videotaping their brawls that they were having. And some hazing that was going on as well. Needless to say, that video somehow made its way into my captain's inbox before anyone else on the ship knew what happened. Looking back, I wish I had gone with my gut and shut it down a lot earlier. It's also one of my mistakes that I made as a DCA.
Okay, so I noted here, you got the X for it. Here's the thing. You just heard go with your gut. You also heard trust your enlisted. What's the bridge between those two? The answer is judgment. Your judgment. Because as you also just heard, who's accountable? The answer is you are. So here's one of the other takeaways for all of you. Although this comes from the naval tradition, the language does, but the impact is common to all. The notion is inescapable accountability. You are responsible for what happens and fails to happen, period. Hazing is a great example of where some, mostly career enlisted, think that's an important passage into becoming a sailor, airman, soldier, marine, ordnanceman, Amtracker, tanker, whatever. The answer is the training program is what's important. The hazing is bullying. It was done to them so they feel like they have the right to do it to the next guys in line. And you stand as the defender, inescapably accountable for what happens and fails to happen. I will leave this thought with just one. Yes, sir, just go ahead, sir. Well, it's a quick one. It's a quote from Colin Powell, a fairly well-known soldier. And it says, being responsible sometimes pissing people off. Sir.
I just want to, in light of a few things that have happened in all services, but I'll point out you don't even need to be on the bridge of a ship to be relieved for the actions of your subordinates. And we talk in the senior class, at least in the Army Department, you're responsible for everything your people do or fail to do at all times, good, bad, and ugly. And I'm just reiterating that point. And senior NCOs are to automatically have your respect and trust until proven untrustworthy, and then you need to take care of business. And I see this happening a couple times in my almost 30-year career. We're kind of back on a wave. Just because I have rank as a captain or I have rank as an E7, I'm automatically the most trustworthy guy or gal in the unit. And you have to, you start with everybody on the equal same page, but you very quickly need to figure out who's trustworthy in your unit and who's not. And if they're not, they got to go. They should leave. They'll get people killed. So, sorry I never jumped into any of your panels, but I thought what you just said and what the Lieutenant Commander just said absolutely is one of the best lessons to carry forward.
Let me build on it just a little bit. The Marine Corps has a term called a strategic corporal, which focuses on who makes the biggest difference, and that's the guy at the pointy end of the spear. It's a Marine Corps thing. But if you take it a little further, and you realize the strategic consequences of what your people can do when operating without supervision, you get Abu Ghraib. The Abu Ghraib prison where a sergeant and a bunch of privates decided that they would take pictures of Iraqi, you've all seen the pictures, right? I don't have to go to the gory details of the Iraqi prisoner with a cone on his head wired up with 110 volts. And that goes worldwide. And so the consequences of the officer not being there to supervise is that we handed a strategic club to our opponents, which with they can beat us up and demonstrate that we do not walk the talk. We are, in fact, the great crusading oppressors that they always said we were. That's what I mean by inescapable accountability and strategic consequences. That's what that bar and commission means. When they say reposing special trust and confidence, they don't mean he's a good guy some of the time. They mean 24/7 all the time. Inescapable accountability. As Colin Powell says, you got to be ready to piss people off. That's not the operational mode all the time, but sometimes it's necessary. Okay, so having one of our panelists reach the hardest decision ever made in the first year, I'm now going to get us back on track and ask the others if they would like to weigh in as well. Captain McGill?
Repeat the question.
Hardest decision you had to make in your first couple of years after flight school?
I'm going to take a pass on this one.
Okay, no hard decisions. Captain Klopfer.
I'm going to skip to my third year where
Sure.
I was on deployment. This is in Afghanistan, and one of the hardest decisions you have to make when I was at headquarters Afghanistan in Kabul was telling a general, like, we can't do this. And everything that comes along with that is your credibility, the trust they have in you. I mean, I'm a first lieutenant at this point, barely, still wet behind the ears kind of guy. And I've got to tell a general, like someone who's spent their entire career, who knows the answer, every time, you have full trust in them. And I have to tell a general, no, like, we can't do that. And it was really difficult to do, and it's one of those things that, you're weighing back and forth in your head. Is this, am I sure that I'm right? That sort of thing. And if thankfully I made the right call. And of course, the lawyer came in, and God bless the lawyer. They had my back on that one, and the situation thankfully went on without a hitch, essentially, and we had that strategic level impact avoided had we gone through with the initial plan. So I would say that was definitely my scariest moment and the most difficult.
Okay, so what did you learn from it?
Well, what I learned from that is
Besides, you can trust lawyers.
what I learned from that is trust your gut, be good at your job, because if you know exactly why you're doing what you're saying you're going to do, then you know that you have the right answer. And realize that even though the individual that I was talking to, the general that I was talking to, was an Army guy. His background is ground. My background is air. That's why I'm on his team. That's why I was put in that position. So when I have to give an air opinion, ideally that is, I'm there because I'm his liaison. I'm his air advisor.